you to do something before I begin. Look around the room you are sitting in right now. Look at the corners, the shadows behind the furniture, the space beneath your bed. Now ask yourself, how long has it been since you last checked whether anything was looking back? My name is Dr. Nguyen Van Phuc. I am 74 years old. I am a retired physician. I have delivered over 400 babies. I have held the hands of over 200 dying people. I have never been a superstitious man, but I am telling you this now because I am running out of time, and someone needs to know what I saw in those mountains, what I smelled, what I heard, and what looked back at me through a dead man's eyes. I have never told this story to anyone, not my wife of 40 years, not my children, not the priest who takes my confession. But the thing I saw that November night has been standing at the edge of my dreams every single night for 30 years. And I think it is almost time for it to come closer. November 1987. I had been assigned to a remote medical clinic in the mountains of Lao Cai province. The kind of place that does not appear on maps. The kind of place where you drive for 6 hours on roads that are really just suggestions of roads. And then you walk for another 2 hours into fog so thick you cannot see your own hands. The village had perhaps 60 families, mostly Dao ethnic minority. They grew rice on terraced hillsides. They kept chickens and a few pigs. They were kind to me in the careful way that mountain people are kind to outsiders. Welcoming enough to be polite, reserved enough to make clear that there were things they would not discuss. I noticed the animals first. Every evening, without exception, the village dogs were locked inside before dark, not tied up outside, inside, behind closed doors. The chickens were in their coops by late afternoon, the pigs secured. I asked the village elder about this on my 3rd week. She smiled the way she always smiled when I asked questions she did not want to answer. Animals know things we have forgotten, she said. We just try to keep up. I thought it was charming folklore. I wrote it in my journal as a cultural observation. I was a fool. Old Man Tan died on a Tuesday evening. Heart failure. I was there when it happened. I watched the life leave his body. I checked his pulse at his wrist, his neck. I shone a light into his pupils. Fixed and dilated. No response. I signed his death certificate at 11:47 p.m. His family began their vigil immediately. 3 days, that is the custom. 3 days of burning incense, leaving food, speaking to the body as though it can still hear. What I did not know then was why 3 days. What I did not know was that in the belief of these mountain people, the soul does not leave the body immediately. For 3 days it lingers, confused, lost, looking for the way out. And while it searches, the body is empty. And empty things attract attention. On the first night, I noticed the smell. Not the smell of death. I know what death smells like. I have been a doctor for 30 years. This was different. Something underneath the incense. Something wet, dark, ancient. Like the smell of water that has been sitting still in complete darkness for a very long time. Like something that had been deep underground, had found its way up. On the morning of the 2nd day, I found the first animal, a chicken, lying just outside the house where Old Man Tan's body lay. It had not been killed by a predator. There were no marks on it, no wounds, no blood. It was simply empty. That is the only word I have. The feathers were intact, the body was whole. But it was completely hollow, like something had reached inside and taken everything that made it alive. The village elder removed it quickly. She would not look at me. By afternoon, there were 3 more, all outside the same house, all the same, whole on the outside, empty on the inside. The smell was stronger now, even outside, even in the open air. That wet, dark smell with no source I could find, but that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I noticed the plants, too. A patch of grass just beside the doorway where the body was kept had gone completely black, overnight. Not dead, not dry. Black and wet and somehow wrong. Like the ground itself was beginning to remember something it had been trying to forget. I was woken at 2 a.m. by absolute silence. Not quiet. Silence. In the jungle, there is never silence. Insects, night birds, the distant sound of water, always something. But at 2 a.m. on the second night, nothing. And then the smell. Inside my room. That wet, dark, ancient smell. So strong now that I could taste it. Like iron. Like soil after heavy rain. Like something that had been buried for a very long time. Was in the room with me. Then the knock at my door. Min, the village chief's son. Face the color of ash. Hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the torch. "Doctor," he whispered, "you need to come now. Do not make any noise. Do not run. And whatever you do, whatever you hear, do not call out his name." We found the others gathered at the edge of the village. 12 people, silent as stones, all staring in the same direction, toward the tree line. I could smell it before I saw it. That smell, stronger than anything I had ever experienced, filling my throat, my lungs, like breathing in the darkness itself. Old Man Tan, standing at the edge of the jungle in his burial shroud. I had signed his death certificate. I had checked his pulse, his breathing, his pupils. He was dead. He was dead, and he was standing 40 meters away from me, moving. Not the way a person moves. Something was wrong with the angle of his neck, tilted too far, in a direction that necks do not tilt. His arms hung at angles that made my medical training recoil, like the joints had been rearranged by something that understood the structure of a human body, but had never actually lived inside one. He was moving toward the river, slowly, deliberately, each step placed with terrible precision. Like something learning, with each step, what legs are for. The grass where he had walked was black, the same black as the patch beside the doorway, wet and dark and wrong. As if the ground itself was reacting to what was walking on it. And the smell was coming from him, rolling toward us like fog. That wet, dark, ancient smell. The smell of something that had been underground for a very long time. That was now above it. The child standing next to me whispered his grandfather's name. Ong Tan. The thing in the burial shroud stopped, slowly, terribly slowly. It turned its head, not its body, just its head, and it looked at us with Old Man Tan's face, with Old Man Tan's eyes. But I have looked into thousands of pairs of eyes in my medical career, and I have never seen eyes that looked like that. Empty, ancient, patient. Like something that had been waiting in darkness since long before any of us were born, had finally found a face to wear. And the smell hit us then, full and direct and overwhelming. Several of the villagers stepped back. One woman covered her mouth. The child began to cry silently. And still it looked at us, with those empty, patient, ancient eyes. The smell washing over us like a wave, like a greeting, like recognition. The shaman arrived before I could speak. An old woman, smaller than the children, moving through the crowd like she had done this 100 times before. Because she had. She burned something in a clay pot. I don't know what it was. The smoke was gray and smelled of something I cannot name. Something old. Something that cut through the dark, wet smell like a blade. Something that made the hair on my arms stand completely upright. She began to speak. Not Vietnamese, not any language I had ever heard. Something that sounded less like words, and more like the mountain itself was speaking through her mouth. The thing in the burial shroud turned toward her. The empty eyes moved away from us and found her. And for a moment, just a moment, something changed in those eyes. Not fear. Something older than fear. Recognition. Like it knew her. Like it had known her for a very long time. The shaman did not look away. She spoke louder. The smoke thickened. The thing in the burial shroud took one step toward her, then stopped. The shaman's voice rose to something that was not quite a shout and not quite a song. Something in between. Something that seemed to come from deeper in her chest than a human voice should reach. And the thing in the burial shroud stood completely still for what felt like an hour. And then it collapsed, like a puppet whose strings had been cut, not falling, folding in on itself in a way that a body with bones should not be able to fold. The sound it made when it hit the ground, I will not describe. I will only say this. In 30 years of medicine, I have heard many terrible sounds. The sound that came from Old Man Tan's body when it hit the ground was none of those things. It was something I had never heard before, and something I have heard every single night in my dreams for 30 years. In the morning, the village elder sat with me over tea, very calm, as if we were discussing the weather. "It happens sometimes," she said. "When someone dies before their time, the door stays open a little too long." "What comes through?" I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. "Something that was waiting," she said. "Something that has always been waiting. We just don't always notice the door." I asked her if it was dangerous. She smiled. The kind of smile that is not really a smile. "Only if it finds what it is looking for," she said. I asked her what it was looking for. She set down her tea. She looked out the window at the jungle. "The same thing everything in the dark is always looking for," she said quietly. "A way in." I sat with that for a long time. Then I asked her one more question. "Has it found one?" She did not answer immediately. She looked at the jungle for a very long time. "Not yet," she said. "But it is very, very patient." I left the village 2 weeks later. I filed my report. I described the death, the burial, the standard procedures. I did not describe what I saw at the tree line. Who would believe me? I'm a doctor. But I will tell you this. 30 years later, I still cannot sleep with the lights off. Not because of what I saw in that burial shroud, but because of what happened the morning after. When I went to check Old Man Tan's body, to confirm he was truly dead this time, I found him exactly where he had fallen, cold, still, at peace. But before I covered his face, I looked at his eyes one final time. And for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, something looked back. Not Old Man Tan. Something behind his eyes. Something that had not fully left yet. Something that looked at me the way you look at a door when you are deciding whether or not to come back through it. I covered his face. I walked outside. I stood in the morning fog for a long time. And I made a decision I have kept every day since. I decided never to speak of this, never to write it down, never to give it the attention it seemed to want. Because I think, and this is the belief of a rational, scientific man, that some things grow stronger when they are seen, when they are spoken of, when they are given a name. So I kept my silence for 30 years. But I am 74 now, and I am tired. And there is something I have noticed in the past few months. That wet, dark, ancient smell, just for a moment, in the corner of a room, at the edge of a dream. And I think it has been patient long enough. The shaman died 3 months after I left. Natural causes, they said. The village elder who made me tea disappeared the following winter. No one found her body. The village itself was abandoned by 1992. If you search for it now, you will not find it on any map. Some places are better left unfound. I am 74 years old. I've lived a good life, a rational life, a scientific life. But every night, before I turn off the light, I check the window. And sometimes, in the darkness outside, just at the edge of where the light reaches, I see something, standing very still, watching, patient. The way things in the dark are always patient because they know that eventually every light goes out. If you made it to the end, you are braver than most. Subscribe for more forgotten accounts from Vietnam's darkest highlands. The next story comes from someone who didn't make it out. Sleep well, if you can.